today we're going to be talking about a pretty broad subject and try to get some specifics about it. But we're talking about being a man of God and being a woman of God. And we've been hanging out together now for quite a while, right?
Long enough.
Yeah. And so during that time, we've learned a lot about you being a woman, me being a man, and how that fits in with God's design, but particularly as it relates to what you contribute to me being a man of God and what I contribute to you being a woman of God. So we picked out a couple things just to talk about. You excited about it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I could talk a long time, so you just have to cut me off if I start telling stories that go too long. One of the things we want to talk about, I think, is how much it's just a lot of work.
Yes.
When you put men who are designed a certain way and women who are designed a certain way, and we're designed to think a certain way, and I don't know how to think like you do. So it makes it hard work to figure out how to work things out together, and how to negotiate is really difficult.
And vice versa. And I think, and today we'll be using a lot of examples from our marriage, but we have lots of great male-female relationships within our community of friends, within our work community. So, filter it all through that. So when we talk about our experiences, we're not just talking about married life, because, one of the things that the Bible makes really clear is that we're not going to be married in heaven, which is a mind blower.
It is.
No, so.
Well, we kind of started out with you and I just talking about how much work it is. And we had to take from each of our families, and you do that in friendship too. You end up meeting people that you really enjoy, and then as you get to know them better, you realize, they're complete. They think completely differently from me,
right.
And figuring that out. But the other side of that is that the rewards are so great. The rewards are so good when you get down the line, when you realize that at some point we decided to make friends and decided we wanted a community and to stick with them.
Yeah.
So that as we got through the hard times, we had really solid, deep friendships.
Well, one of the things that became apparent is that there are different stages to relationships, marriage as well, but also friendships. And while we're growing together, we remain the same people. That was one thing that you start realizing. And I remember when we got to the point where I had been, I was 21 when we got married, 21, 22. And I remember when we looked at each other and said, we have been married now as long as we were single. And I've always gone back to that and looked at it because, you grow up in your family's households, and that's who you are. And, you're never going to not be that person. The fun thing about a relationship or about friendships is that you become modified in light of the other people that are around you because you're not an island.
Right.
Which is cool.
Right. I think the rewards of it, they're just deeply satisfying. And when I look back now and realize how the hard work was so worth it, because the deep satisfaction, it's like you can't really explain it, but I just want to encourage people, just do it. Just do the hard work of it, because the satisfaction in the end it's just so deep, and the friendships are deep.
Well, that you say friendship, companionship, mutual appreciation, being loved and respected by friends, spouses, families, coworkers, all of that is really huge when it comes to having a satisfied mind about your life.
And it's taken a lot of life experiences. You begin to trust each other in a marriage and in friendships because you go through the times together and predetermined to stick it out. And I don't know, it's really worth it.
Yeah, well, and the kind of people that you hang out with too, the quality of people makes a difference. I wrote down, living a life of humility and personal sacrifice causes me to come to a place of a satisfied mind. And when I share that with other people. So we have found that in our marriage, but we have also found that in our friendships. And that's huge when it comes to reward.
And one of my examples of going through hard times was when you and I, we hadn't been married very long. And, pretty much I grew up living under my dad's decisions, and then my own decisions. And then I married you, and, we were having to make decisions together, but sometimes you bolted ahead on decisions because
really? I don't remember that.
Well, it's just who you are. But I can distinctly remember driving somewhere and me thinking, this isn't going to work. This decision he's making, it's just bad. And I can remember looking out the window, and I felt like God was telling me, I took care of you all these years when you made your own dumb decisions
Yeah.
and when your dad made the best decisions he knew how to make. And I'm going to take care of you now. And it wasn't so much that he was telling me that you need to submit, you need to be silent, you need to be meek. It wasn't any of that. He was just saying, you're going to get through this because I'm taking care of you.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And that was a huge lesson for me. It was not easy. And I'm sure it's not the only time you had to remind me.
Well, and I want to digress just a little bit there because, what you find out in a relationship is that you can do certain things for each other as companions and as friends,
Yeah.
but there are certain things you can't do, and there are places that only God is meant to fulfill.
Right. I think another thing that was challenging for us, or decisions we had to make, had to do with things that were going on in our culture and how much are we going to embrace it and go with
Right.
it, and how hard are we going to resist things that we feel like aren't good, whether
Sure.
you're in a marriage or in a friendship or whatever it is. Those are decisions really everybody has to make. Those aren't easy because the culture is really influential.
Yeah, in fact, you have to be constantly vigilant, and the challenges are just really epic. And if you're not firmly grounded, not just in the Bible, but in who God is and what His purposes are for us, well, you can get really blown around in our culture, and it's always been true. It's not like things have changed about human beings. We're pretty much the same as we've always been.
Well, can I tell another story?
Oh, okay.
As as we were getting married, one of the cultural things that was happening was if I was challenged, the culture was telling me that by a man, I could just think of or say out loud that you were a male chauvinist pig.
Right.
I mean, that was just, it was just out there. But what I had to come to realize was on one side of this culture, we had this idea that women were to be silent. And instead of maybe submissive, we were subservient.
Right. Right.
So then we were making this swing about where we could challenge everything.
Mm-hmm.
And, ultimately in a marriage, for each of us to challenge each other all the time, after a while, you just don't like each other.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn that my influence, my power, and I believe, I say the word influence, but I pretty deeply mean that women are pretty powerful in their marriage.
Oh, yeah.
If and when they, like for instance, if I give my opinion and you poo-poo it, it's really okay with me. Or I say, oh, this is where that happened. You go, no, it happened over here. You know how all those fights happen over little things. And I learned to say what I thought and then just be quiet. And when you found out I was right, you had to eat it or vice versa.
Yeah, it worked both ways if I remember right.
I'm just saying that I had to learn that it was okay to be quiet. It didn't mean, me sort of standing up for myself doesn't mean that I have to challenge every single thing that goes on in our marriage.
Well, and that just makes me think about our overall topic of being a man of God and being a woman of God. There are many experiences that happen in life, and God's always at work inside of us. And we find ourselves really in a state of flux as we build the kingdom together. Our mutual value cannot be underestimated. And I think that's what I've learned, not just in our marriage, but I've learned in my friendship with women and with other men. And I know you've learned this with guys in our community together, is that we have value. And when you get in touch with that male value and female value in light of our personal recipe for who God has made us to be, that's incredibly powerful and satisfying.
It is.
To the mind.
And the bigger thing of the satisfaction is that you just really enjoy people. You enjoy how God has made them rather than always noticing the rub.
How come they're not like me?
Boring. Another thing I think that we have learned is how to build a shelter home. And I have a friend who has invited more people to live with her. Just at times of, finishing up college, and when they had a few months of things not working out, she would just invite them to live with her.
Yeah.
She offered such shelter. We've taken in a foster child. Now, that's kind of a global type foster where you take someone in. But just ultimately to have a sheltering home is just extending yourself in small ways and in big ways.
Well, and hanging out with other people too, because when we think about success and self-sacrifice, it usually has involved making decisions and doing things that cost us personally as we've extended ourselves creatively and personal in responding to God when he has directed us to shelter others. And I would say that we are drawn to other shelter people because shelter people really share God's vision. And that's why God talks about caring for widows and orphans and for people that are in need. And I love to have companions, including you, where our first thought is, what can we do to shelter that person and help that person?
Kingdom friendships are for this life and the life to come.
Yeah.
That was a big thing for me to realize, that they're not just for now. These relationships we have this is the beginning of a long, long time of relationships into eternity.
Yeah, and I mentioned it earlier, it's hard to imagine that marriage is only for this life, but within true God marriage is a deep understanding that we're before all things, being married, we are brothers and sisters. And this is clearly taught in the scriptures, and that together as males and females, we complete each other. And that's not just on a marriage level, that's on a human level. It was not good for the man to be alone.
But on the marriage level, what have I brought to your life?
You're going to put me on the spot?
I am, because I know you've thought about it.
Well, fortunately, like I said, my woman of God companions are better than me so I'm going to reflect on you here. But I was also thinking about other special gals in our lives because it's pretty cool, really, when you can have great friendships with lots of people. My woman of God companions are better for me, or better than me, because like Adam, I'm alone without the beauty and grace of the completion of Eve. And together we bring things that, despite what our culture asserts, can only find completion as both men and women of God avail ourselves to embracing the design he established for kingdom life. So I say all that to say, to answer your question specifically, and I've used this analogy before, I'm like a black and white photo, pretty meat and potatoes, feed me, point me in the right direction, meet my basic needs, and I'm going to live my life and I'm going to do it. Okay. But, and I think people can survive that way, but you're the color of my life. It's like looking at a black and white photograph. And have you ever seen one when they've done the thing where they bring the color into it as it happens? And that's exactly how I feel about you. So how does that impacted me from a companionship, from a friendship, from a kingdom perspective? Almost in every area of my life, because you are the color of my life. You are light of my life.
Well, I have to answer the same question. And I think when I think about the men in my life, they offer often a constancy that is really good for me.
Yeah.
They offer a black and white that's really good for me.
One of the things that's interesting about our relationship together, as well as who we are as people, is that you have always enjoyed hanging out with guys. And I've always enjoyed hanging out with girls. And I'm talking about, companionship,
Which
friendship.
presented some problems early in our
It did. We had some things to work out.
That.
But how that's worked out now in our relationship is I think we're pretty comfortable with couples and single people and different people that are different than ourselves. And I don't know, it's kind of one of the colorful, beautiful parts of our relationship.
Specifically, I feel like you know the word better than me. So when I say that you're a constant for me, that's been really good for me to trust and believe that I can trust what you say that the word says.
Yeah.
And it's not like we don't kind of argue that through sometimes what it means, but there is something really solid for me in that.
Yeah.
Also, I find you to be really impartial, and I wish I could be like that, but I struggle. I feel like I struggle with it more than I see on the outside. So maybe on the inside you do, but you really treat, everyone with care. You care about people, and how often I see you set yourself aside to care for someone. I'm like, I'm not doing it.
I sound like a great guy.
You are, but I do see you do that, and it's good for me.
Yeah, and I think the other side of that, I think I am really committed to principle, but you're really committed to processing how I'm applying the principles. Okay. And I mean that in a very positive way. I mean, you don't ever say, why are you doing that? You basically just say, so this is the working of that principle. How? And you figure creatively how to ask that question. And I appreciate that about you. And I think that's why this partnership has worked together, why we are truly partners, why you are 100% female and I am 100% male, but we have taken the best of who we both are and we have forged a life together along with our friends who have the same perspective.
I just wrote down something that I had earlier in my notes that I forgot to say is that when you started, excuse me, really appreciating and taking my opinion into account, it changed everything. And I'm sure it did the same thing for you. And I look at that with our friends. When they know that I value their opinion and when I know they value mine, it's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, remember what I started out with. We were going to use a lot of examples about becoming a man of God and a woman of God, which we've experienced together along with our community of friends. And this is my concluding statement right here. Men and women of God are stronger when we're not alone. Companionship, acceptance, friendship, success, and care and concern are the deep things that we crave and which complete us for the journey of life and into the life to come. And one of my favorite musings is to think about, I know we're not going to be married in heaven. We're going to spend all of these decades together and we're not going to be married in heaven. So I'm going to be, whatever that looks like, because I only have certain information on heaven, I'm going to bump into you in heaven. And I'm thinking, I'm going to see you across the room, and whatever we look like and whatever our being will be like at that particular point. And I'm going to see you and I'm going to go,
I was a lucky guy.
Well, I'm going to say that, but I'm thinking just in the terms of what's inside of you. Because I, as a man of God, as I pursued becoming a man of God, I've understood more about what makes you tick as a woman of God. And, really that's what we're talking about here is how can we live in the kind of community, the kind of marriage, the kind of relationships, the kind of friendships that really honor Jesus' kingdom.
And are deeply satisfying.
That was fun.
It was fun.
We always have a good time together, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Hey, and thanks for being so open and for sharing some of the things that you did today. It's just great to be kingdom companions.